Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. One of these days we'll figure out technology, but there's always something going on.
By the time we do, the guarantee is we will have already been 5 or 6 generations behind the new cool thing. So we'll
Wh-
figure it out just in time to move on to the next thing and be confused by that. And we decided to bring on Graves this week. Our good friend Graves is back with us. And because we're going to be talking about a lot of roster move stuff, I figured why wait for the eventual DM correcting all my mistakes when I could just have Graves on to fix them in person while we were recording. How are you today, Graves?
Guys, I'm doing great. It's always a pleasure to sit down with you and talk some baseball, and I'm excited to be here today.
So today, everybody, we're going to be basically officially kicking off the Pirates off season. I know it already has been the Pirates off season, but it officially starts now. So we're going to wrap up the World Series a little bit, and then we're going to dip into some of the important stuff that is coming up and some decisions they may or may not have already just made.
I thought
So
this was
let's
I thought this was going to be an hour-long Austin Hedges show. I'm sorry, I've misprepared.
It can be. I think it's a little crazy the amount of hate that the guy is still receiving. But yeah, the Texas Rangers pull it off. They win it in five. Won every game they played on the road the entire postseason, which is crazy. I was rooting for them because, like we said on the show a couple weeks ago, it was their first World Series. I always root for that. And seeing some of the reactions from the fans, it hit me right in the feels because I know I'm going to break down like a big blubbering baby when and if it happens. Heck, I broke down when Pedro had a single and they won a game against the Cardinals. So, I mean, I know where I'm headed, but what did you guys think of the series? It wasn't very well viewed, I'll say that.
Yeah, ratings were kind of down. Baseball's so regional. I just think that unless you get one of like the big five markets to carry it, it's probably going to be like that. I could care less about that aspect of it. Um, Going into the nuts and bolts of the series, yeah, Gary, you touched on it, man. Like 10 straight road wins for a team in the postseason is bonkers. Like I know that it got talked about. I think it should be talked about more because like think about even regular season. You get a 4 game series against like the Braves in Atlanta.
Yeah.
If you go 2-2, you're headed home happy. They
Right.
ripped off 10 in a row against different teams, all playing their best baseball. It's insane. It really is.
I mean, in Graves, they did that largely on the back of Corey Seager, who's one of only 4 players to ever win 2 MVPs, the only one to ever win it in both leagues. You know where those other 3 people are, right? They're all in the hall. So, I mean,
Yeah,
kind of feels like Corey's on a trajectory, doesn't it? How
yeah.
did you, what did you think of the series in general? And
I'm with Jim. I don't really care. Who's in the World Series. I'm going to be watching. So I think it both teams started out really strong, and I'm like thinking, hey, this could go 7 games, and then it was just kind of like the switch, and they flipped the switch, and Arizona didn't play so well defensively. They had the bullpen game, which I'm still at a loss on words for that. It's the World Series. I don't want to see a bullpen game, but kudos to the Texas Rangers. They played flawlessly and had great pitching. Seager was lights out. I'm definitely he was deserving of winning the MVP, and I mean even Marcus Simeon. I mean he came up big. So
yeah,
the 2 big guys that they signed in the offseason, it paid off for them.
Was that game one where the D-backs had the lead late and then gave up the big home run? Was that game one?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You wonder if that series looks any different, if they can just hold on to that game and get that first one, because the first one's pivotal. The third
pivotal.
game's pivotal. Like, there's certain games that kind of matter more than others. And I thought the Diamondbacks, boy, they really missed that opportunity early. But hey, credit to the Rangers, man.
And I would say too, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and I felt like they did get there with bullpen games, Graves. So I guess I wasn't too surprised to see them try to employ it in the World Series too.
You wonder,
and that's true, and after the Diamondbacks did lose that late one, they've bounced back most every other time. So I was hoping to see that again, and they just couldn't get it done.
And they did initially, getting game 2.
Yep.
You wonder why teams, like, when you go into the postseason, like, if the Arizona Diamondbacks would have just simply said, we're just going to walk Corey Seager every time he comes up. Like, you're just not going to let him be. I know that's oversimplifying it, but like every time it's humanly possible, just give him the Barry Bonds treatment.
I certainly think they tried to do that in Game 5, and he ended up reaching out and hitting pretty much an unhittable pitch to break up a no-hitter. Which is a very Corey Seager thing to do.
Right.
And then comes up later on with runners on. There wasn't much choice but to pitch to him, and even then he walked them. So
situationally, sure. I thought there were times earlier in the series where they went after him, and it was a big no-no.
They paid the price.
The World Series, all in all, I think it was nice seeing some different teams in it. Always nice to see, for me. I think that first-time winner, I think that's always nice for the league, and I haven't gotten to see one personally, so I'm a little bitter, but at least it's in my franchise's history, right? So I've always liked that aspect of the World Series. Whenever there was a fresh team in it, I thought that was a good thing. So we're starting the offseason, and we know what the clock looks like. It starts immediately, right? The baseball gives you no time to rest at all. We're going to take a quick break, but before we do, here's the rundown of what we're going to be discussing today. Free agency starts in 5 days. Options, you have to pick them up or decline them within 5 days. 60-day remittals to the 40-man have to start within 5 days. And the non-tender deadline is November 17th. And the Pirates have already moved somebody we were going to talk about as an option. Tucupita Marcano has been claimed off waivers by the San Diego Padres. So essentially that trade now is Jack Sawinski and Michelle Milano.
Yeah.
Who's in AA. So there it is. I mean, I think you can claim the Jack Sawinski trade probably a win anyway. But
it's funny that Tucupita, I know we got to go, but it's just funny, Charrington wanted him really badly.
Twice.
Yeah, twice. The Padres obviously like him. So I don't know. There's something about the guy that GMs seem to like.
Well, we can talk about him a little bit more when we start going through this list, because I think we're going to probably talk about the potential of dropping some other borderline talents just like him.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, and we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Graves and Jim with you as well, and we're going to dive into this as best we can. Jim, I started thinking about putting charts up and trying to get all fancy with this video recording, but The numbers are the numbers. We have far more audio listeners than we than we do video watchers.
Yeah.
So I think we need to keep this thing semi-friendly. So I'm not going to read off lists of names and just go ape and ham. We're going to kind of be realistic about it. The reality is the Pirates could protect or leave exposed any number of players this year for the Rule 5. I don't think everybody was a consensus belief that Jared Triolo was going to be, protected last year, and they certainly did there. And it's not always a rule of thumb that you don't protect people that are in Double-A, like Leover Peguero has been hanging out for a couple of years on the 40-man. So I kind of just dove through everything, and I thought first, before I start worrying about how many guys I need to get rid of, let's worry about all the guys that I think are worth worrying about keeping, right? Because before you start making holes, in other words, if I tell my wife to go to the store and I hand her $10, whatever she gets is going to cost $10. If I give her $7, it's going to cost $7. So I'm not going to tell you we need to cut 20 spots if we really only need to cut 2.
$10 in this economy, Gary? Where are you shopping? I need to know.
I do all the shopping, so
okay.
That scenario never actually happens. I was just making it up. What's going to happen immediately here is the players are going to get added back onto the 40-man, and that comes from like the 60-man expirations. You have to put them back on the roster, and we know some of those coming up, Graves. We have JT Brubaker, Mike Burrows. Some of these you have to make 2 decisions on. You got to decide, I want to take them back off the 60-man and put them on my roster, and I want to tender them. So if there's a guy like JT Brubaker, for instance, that has tender and 60-man next to his name, if they make one decision, they're essentially making the second decision, right?
Right.
So I think it's fair to say Tucupita Marcano was in that class.
Yeah.
They made the decision, right? They didn't have to tender him, but they had to take him off the 60-man to get him back on the 40, and they decided pretty quickly not so much. Are you guys a little shocked by that? I feel like he's a big enough character that we should probably spend a little time talking about that, right?
Graves, go ahead.
I wasn't totally surprised. There's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made this offseason. And, the injury obviously hurt Tucupita's chances of making this team. He's going to be out most of 2024. And so I think it was almost, I won't say it was an easy decision to put him on waivers and to see him go, but I'm not surprised. I think there's other players that we want to see more from and have a higher ceiling than what Tucupita could provide.
Yeah, that's why the injury was such a shame, Jim, because it kind of wrote the story for him, right? Because I'm not saying that his numbers impressed me. They didn't. And I think he had a tough path anyway with some of the competition that's in front of him for playing time. But I didn't hate his game either. Like, I think it's entirely possible he turns into something.
Yeah. I'll tell you how I looked at it. I really didn't react to it from expectations or not for them doing it. What I kind of gleaned from it is that maybe it's an indication from this regime that they are going to make decisions a little more with the focus on whether or not they can help soon, quicker than in the past. More immediately looking at like, can they help within the next year or so? We need to start figuring that out really quickly. And so he's not going to be in that situation. And I just felt that maybe it's an indication of how they're going to really start looking at it as opposed to how they were doing it before.
That makes sense, I guess. I don't think there's any other real controversial decisions there. The only one that I think we'll make really quickly here, Arlene Garcia is a simple choice to just not pick up his option, right? I mean, like, as far as I know, still can't grip a baseball. So I don't see any chance of him being added back into this roster. Do you?
Unless I looked for something recent on him, if I've missed it, ladies and gents, tell me, because I assume he's still alive, but I don't know anything other than that, right? I
just heard Jason Mackey say the other day that he didn't think that he could still pick up a baseball.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, to answer your question, he is still alive. I think he's actually doing a podcast or joining some type of show in the winter leagues down in the Dominican. Cool. So, there's no buyout. I mean, it's not to say that they couldn't, re-sign him to something less than the $3.25 million, but if he's not healthy, it's a no-brainer.
Right. So that's an easy decision.
And again, I think it goes back to what I'm looking at now is, like, if you just don't know, if there's not going to be any immediate help, it's time. Like, it's time in my mind, at least.
Yeah. The other 60-man guy, Kutch. Yeah, I mean, he's not really on the roster, so I'm not going to leave a spot for him. They'd be smart not to leave a spot for him too. Kind of make a decision with him. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You're going to get signed. Don't talk to anybody. We'll get it done.
Yeah,
there's no reason to use up the 40-man spot right now.
Right. Him and Vince basically became free agents this morning. So right. They're free agents. That there's that 5-day window where they can only negotiate with the Pirates. But yeah, I think something's going to definitely get done with Kutch. It's just wait and see, and not making anything too quickly.
So that puts us around 44 as far on the 40-man. I think when you finish up all the math, and that obviously isn't where you want to be. A lot of things have to happen, but first things first. You have to make room for people that you want to protect on the 40-man from the Rule 5 draft. You do that first, and then you worry a little bit later about making room for free agents, and you worry about making room for trades and things like that down the road. You got to leave yourself a spot for Rule 5 guy you might want to get, although I don't think the Pirates should really be in the market this year.
Right.
That said,
unless there's somebody
like a Jose Hernandez again that you really think could legitimately help you, by all means.
If you're sitting there and a guy falls into your lap that you've loved, I mean, then of course you make some kind of arrangement to do it.
Right. So that's 4 spots. Now I looked through the people that I think they could find spots for, and I gotta be honest. There's maybe 3 that I think have a good shot of being protected. None of them would I consider absolute lock, have to be protected guys. I don't think that we have the problem we all forecasted, because they took care of most of it as we played out 2023. They ended up adding most of the guys that I think were going to be a concern in this category, really, as the season played out. So the list I'm left with for adding and protecting here is really Sung-Shae Chang. I think he's probably the most important position player as far as protection goes. Braxton Ashcraft probably breaks a rule for me, being that he's really a double-A pitcher and hasn't pitched a whole lot, but he's got top-end crazy stuff, and he has gone through Tommy John. Looks like his stuff is back. He's a really quality pitcher. I feel like he would probably get picked up and stashed in someone's bullpen if we didn't protect him. And then latecomer here, Jace Bowen, for me. I'm still iffy on this one, but I've been significantly talked into it because he's had a good fall in the Arizona Fall League. That didn't mean anything for Blake Sable last year, but this is the same type of player. Can play a lot of different positions, one of them being first base, all of them being the outfield predominantly. Got a little bit of power. He's a guy that I could see. After that, guys, it gets a little bit light for me. I just don't see anybody else worth protecting. And the popular name that people like to throw at me is Jared Jones. He doesn't need protected this year, so no need for that discussion. Graves, anything I missed out of that crazy long diatribe?
No, it really, Chang might be the closest thing to a lock that I see, but I actually noted the same three players that you did, and I think maybe sometimes we look back at last year and think about what the 11 guys that we lost between Major League Rule 5 and Minor League Rule 5,
Yeah.
and we got lucky with Jose Hernandez, and we're able to carry him all year long, and he did really, really well. So I agree with you. I don't see that many being protected, and but it should be interesting times.
I mean, Jim, I've heard some people bringing up some of the same names from last year. I hear Nunez again. I hear Gorski again. I just don't see it. And another guy that people are trying to force feed me, at least, is Joe Perez. I have a hard time believing that a guy that just went through waivers last year could have been anywhere for 50 grand is going to go anywhere for 100 grand this year. I just don't think so, man.
Right. I mean, and here's what I would say: if the names you just listed with Nunez and the other ones, I just look at it like, look, if someone's going to take a chance and do that, I'm not going to weep over it if it happens.
Yeah.
Even for me, Bowen is somebody that I'm on the fence about. I don't necessarily think he's a lock, but I can understand the line of thinking there. So yeah, the good problem here is I don't think there's a big group of names where there's a lot of huge argument about who you would keep. And if someone's bringing up Jared Jones and you see that he's not protected, there's only one reason for that, and that's because he doesn't have to be.
It's the same reason Paul Skeens won't be protected.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, I mean, we're not forgetting guys like that. Trust me.
Right. So you got to make room, right? That's 2-3 guys there we're kind of thinking of. So let's talk about adding or subtracting spaces. And one of the first ways to do that is to go through the tender list. And that's the people that, are due arbitration. And right now you're not deciding what they're getting paid. You're just kind of deciding whether you want to even pursue this with them. Most of this list, again, with the Pirates, because we've been in this position, they're pretty simple decisions. Mitch Keller, I think for $6 million, you're going to go ahead and do it. Hopefully we don't even get to this process. You just sign him.
Right.
David Bednar, really not a discussion. $4.7 million somewhere in there. You're going to absolutely take him to arbitration. Miguel Andujar, I don't know. I mean, I kind of called last year. I didn't see it happening. This year, no matter what they did with him, it's worth a discussion. I mean, try to sell me on tendering Miguel Andujar for $2.2 million. And if you do, what do you do with him? Graves, have a crack.
Well, I think it goes back to what Jim has been saying too. I mean, the focus has shifted here to who can help us now. Miguel Andujar had a great 2023. There's no doubt about that. 100 RBIs between AA or AAA and Major League Baseball. I mean, that's something that should be noted. I mean, he had an incredible year. but knowing that McCutcheon's coming back most likely, I really don't see the fit. I non-tender him, and if he goes elsewhere, then then that's what it is. But he's not somebody that I'm going to be sad with either way or happy about either way. He's just I think he's more of a player that we just don't know enough about, and it could go either way, and I'm willing to let him go.
It's
I mean,
funny how
2.2 million, you could play the game where you take him and you DFA him again, and nobody wants to pay him that, so maybe you settle with him for 2.5 to stash him in the minors again. I wouldn't be willing to do that if I were him, though, after the playing time he got in September, right?
Well, I've been saying even last year with him is if I was him, I would be saying, let me go if you're not really going to give me a chance, let me go somewhere where I can,
Right.
It's funny to me how long the Pirates have kind of toyed with this situation.
Speaking of letting people go off and pursue their life's work, the Pirates have also now moved on from Cody Bolton, Vinny Capra, and Rivas. We all knew Rivas was going to be gone. So right away, that tells you they are not afraid of replacing him at first base, which I did not think they would be. But that clears up 3 more spots right there. So our imaginary 44 is already sitting at 41.
Was that Michael that gave us that information?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was good. Those are definitely 3 names I had on my checklist. So
Canyon tried to too. See?
Oh,
new moves, guys.
Right.
You too, Canyon.
So Miguel Andujar, I think it's a nuanced discussion. I don't think it's as simple as just let him go, but I also don't think this team is in a position to be trying desperately to make a fit for a guy who's a maybe. So I think there's some different ways that we can approach that. Connor Joe, I personally think is a no-brainer. Boy, Craig, my writing partner certainly doesn't think that. I mean, he seems to think like there's at least a good shot that they'll move on from him. I don't. I think he is that insurance policy at first base, Graves, that maybe I think you were thinking Rivas might be.
Well, I mean, Rivas was never really in my plans. I actually like the idea of Connor Joe and Triolo playing there, along with bringing in a free agent to play there most of the time, while Triolo continues to learn the position. I think Rivas was okay for the time that we needed him last year, and now he's going to go get another opportunity. So good for him. And but no, he certainly wasn't a long-term answer.
It surprises me, Craig, with Connor Joe. I just, I wasn't in love with him at the beginning of the year, but, he was really pretty productive. And I think that there's still a need for, someone that had 31 doubles and, 11 home runs and 450 at bats or whatever it was. His OPS was 760. I would think that even if he doesn't factor into that much playing time again, that there's a spot for someone that can provide some pop off the bench, if nothing else. And he's got some positional versatility. So I see him as, I don't say definite, but I'd be really surprised if they moved on from him.
Well, look, you were right to be suspicious about Craig because he says Joe is his guy.
Oh,
he was in favor of non-tendering JT. So, see, I listened and didn't comprehend. But let's clear up these roster moves too, because now I'm reading directly from the Pirates. So,
Can I just let me add one more thing about Andujar? My biggest thing I would say this. Is there anything that's really going to surprise us now about Miguel Andujar? Do we not know kind of what he is? And I just don't see anything where you can do the fear of missing out at this point. I think he is what he is. He can drive in a few runs, not a very good fielder. I'm okay. I'm okay with just moving on.
Yeah, I think like the fear is that you're letting go of a Dallas Garcia type, right? But I think people just don't realize like how rare that is that somebody really takes off like that. Like Palacios, I think, is as close to that as you're going to get. A guy that's just hitting home runs and suddenly kind of comes up at 28 years old and starts doing something out of nowhere. That's really what he did,
Right.
back in 21 when he kind of broke through. So I think that it's just a different type of player. Miguel Andujar, my biggest concern, there's no place to play him. If you don't like certain things that you're dealing with in defensively and right field right now, you're not going to like it with him. You're just not. And you can't put him in left field. You just can't. He doesn't have the range for left field. First base is an adventure. Third base, he was kind of okay at, but the Yankees didn't like it, even when he was hitting. They just masked it. So
that's what I'm
there's
saying.
no place to play him.
I just don't see there's some like big surprise. He's going to be 29. I think he is what he is at this point. So, anyways, go on, Gary.
All right. So Ryan Barucki is another one there that I don't think is much of a question. 1.3 million for a lefty that I think was at least pretty serviceable, and it isn't going to kill you if he reverts into a pumpkin. So I think you probably go ahead and do that. He's a direct replacement for Garcia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He shocked me as the year went on. So I mean, at that price, that's a no-brainer for any team, I would think.
But he shocked me a lot, like your old buddy Trans Am Rick did, like where he doesn't look like he's doing anything to get those strikeouts and outs and weak contact, and just keeps doing it. So I kind of always look at a guy like that as somebody that could regress just as quickly as he came on. And I never forget that a guy like that has already been through several teams doing exactly that. So it's always right there on the table. So let's officially read these transactions just so people know what actually happened. Cody Bolton got traded to Seattle for cash. Vinny Capra has been claimed off waivers by Milwaukee. Rivas has been claimed off waivers by Cleveland, and Marcano claimed off waivers by San Diego. So clearly the Pirates had made these decisions, a little while back, and we just kind of found out about them now. So all in all, nothing too unexpected there, right? There's still a little bit more junk to clean out of the drawer there, don't you think?
Yeah. There definitely is, but this is a good start. A good start to the off season, and I know Bolton. I won't even say he's a surprise. I think I was pretty disappointed in his performance in 2023. So good for him. Good luck in Seattle. So I mean, I like the young man, but there's not anybody there that really is. I'm going to miss.
Yeah, Bolton to me was somebody that maybe a fresh start is better for him at this point. His velocity was pretty good. He just never seemed to have any confidence. I think he just showed that he wasn't a confident guy on the mound. I don't know how he was in the minors, but
confident. That was one of his biggest things, man. Like honestly, he looked like he owned his repertoire.
Yeah,
I was a huge Cody Bolton supporter.
Right. So it just goes to show. I mean, it's a humbling game when you get to the majors because he did not exude that.
Yeah, right. and I know I'm in the minority on this, but his up and down, back and forth from AAA to Major League Baseball all season. He maxed out on us 5 times. I mean, I mean, I get that the player has to perform when their number is called, but I think that it's tough when 1 month you're in Indianapolis and then you're called up to Pittsburgh for 2 weeks and then you're back in Indianapolis. You just never really able to settle in. So I think yeah, a change of scenery for Bolton might be a good thing.
Well, you talk about these guys, and what you hear a lot, and this is just something from listening to older players or recently retired guys, and it's that mind game of like saying, okay, I can compete with these guys, I belong here. And I just think for whatever reason sometimes they never get to say that to themselves, and then before you know it, it's gone sideways on you. And so I think that that's just the big thing. If you can tell yourself that and you believe it and you see some results from it, that's that last big hurdle to being able to stick.
So the way I'm counting this, Pirates have 37 officially on their 40-man out of 40. That's without the 60-man guys. They have to add back in O'Neal Cruz, Angel Perdomo. Oh, they don't have to, but they could choose to.
Right.
Angel Perdomo, Mike Burrows, and JT Brubaker. So 3 spots, 4 guys. There's either somebody else who has been DFA'd and has cleared and we haven't heard about it yet, and or there's somebody else that is going to be traded in the near future that we should be waiting to hear about. I think there's still some pretty easy cuts, though, even just going through the pitching. Like, you have a guy like Hunter Stratton, who he only got a little cup of coffee, but he was kind of long in the tooth to begin with and almost more of a system guy that got called up at the end there. I felt encouraged about his future because he was one of these Rule 5 decisions, and I felt like they kind of went ahead and made it last year, but I don't think that's a guarantee that he sticks. Kyle Nicholas wasn't spectacular, obviously, in the little time he got. That said, I think his arm's big enough that he's worth keeping around, even if just a curiosity for a little while. Max Kranick, probably the same way, right? Although I could see them trying to sneak him through if they felt like it. Heck, Perdomo's a guy they could try to sneak through.
Yeah, I think Kranick is somebody that you might be able to do that with. When it comes to Nicholas, I think it was just such a short little stint, and the first one went. I think it was the first action he got went horrifically wrong, if I recall. So, to me, that's too early to make a determination on. His arm's got a lot of life on it.
Totally agree with that. What do you guys think about Thomas Hatch and Bailey Falter? I'll let you start with this one because Bailey Falter, to me, probably pitched a little better than he got credit for there down the stretch for the Pirates. That said, I don't want him anywhere near my rotation next year. Like, at least not my starting rotation. You need guys like this in AAA too to call up on. So he might be a guy that I'd be more inclined to hold on to than Thomas Hatch. That said, Falter doesn't have any options.
Yeah. I think looking at the options are going to play a big role possibly in who they do decide to keep. I mean, even somebody like Jackson, he doesn't have any options left. They've got several guys that have no options. So, I mean, is it going to come down to that? It could certainly be, but Bailey Falter did do well enough that I would keep him around. Like you said, I mean, we need pitching, and
he did well enough. I guess my question is just to what end? Like, let's say like you keep him around, and then come spring he does well. I don't know that you're going to have left a spot for him. Like, no matter what. Like, I don't think there's a world where Bailey Falter could do anything to convince the Pirates that he's in the opening day rotation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if AAA depth, if nothing else, is probably where he'll max out and be used on this team.
Right. And Hatch doesn't have any options either, and
Yeah,
obviously neither does Perdomo. But I would think, like, if you're gonna keep Perdomo or activate him off the 60, he's probably somebody you're planning on being on this team. That said, we're talking about this bullpen. Well, now we're talking about Baraki and Perdomo and Hernandez, and they're all guys that we kind of want to be in this bullpen. That's three lefties. Lajinsky, Holderman, Bednar. I mean, I'm already at 6. And where are we improving? You know what I mean? So maybe we're probably giving a little too much credit to, like, what we saw was okay, but feels to me like the Pirates could probably move on from a lot of these guys. They have 26 pitchers. At least they did before they made these recent moves. On their 40-man, you got like Osvaldo Bido types on there, and Yeri De Los Santos, I thought, got a decent shot and never really stepped up, and I'm not sure he fits into the back end picture. You don't want to go and just start willy-nilly cutting your depth. But you might see a guy like Hernandez start in AAA, if only because he has options.
Right. I think it comes down to is like when you sit here and you look at the list and you're deciding who to keep and maybe who to, get rid of, or it really comes down to like what's your mindset of what you're planning to do with them if you do keep them. Like that's what worries me. Like you mentioned Falter. I mean, if you have some kind of plan for him, okay, I'll listen to that. I just don't want to hear him being in the starting rotation talk. So, like, tell me why you're thinking what you're thinking, or give me an indication, and then I could be more comfortable with it. But I think so much of it comes down to, and Gary, you mentioned this. You do need guys for depth. You don't know what kind of injuries you're going to have. Look what just happened to them. You're going to need spot starts, and you're going to need double headers, and for double headers or whatever the case. So I just think that, like, there's a lot of different facets to it. My big concern is, what's your mindset with some of these guys? What are you hoping to get out of them? Because in the past, that was a little different than what I want to see now.
So here's another guy that I think is interesting, if only because I don't know what you do with him one way or another. Alika Williams. He had a good stretch in AAA offensively that I think they really hoped would carry over to the majors. And he did some things. He's athletic. He plays. I think he probably has the best shortstop glove in the system right now, at least anywhere near the top end of the system. That said, I don't think that's going to be enough to get him on this club or even sniffing this roster. I'm not sure you need to cut him because, like I said, we're not real desperate for space, and it's always nice to have a good glove as backup, but he's not in this picture either, really, right? I mean, you could probably move on from him if you really felt like it.
He's a guy that, I mean, they gave him over 100 plate appearances, and
they gave Marcano the 4th most on the team.
Yeah, but I'm saying I think they were trying to give him at least a decent look, and the bat just got knocked out of his hands almost nightly. I mean, you're talking about somebody who slugged 248. I mean, we don't need him to be, a world beater, but God bless him. I just think that that's a perfect example of a guy that once you get to the majors and you start facing power pitching, it can start looking a little ugly for some guys that are a little slight.
Yeah, so that's pretty much a run through the roster, and I mean a run through the roster. I defy anyone to do that in 20 minutes and not sound like a chicken with their head cut off.
And we dealt with breaking news.
Breaking news as well, yeah. But I mean, I look at the Rule 5 protection list and I look at the current roster and some of the discussions we just had about like some delicate, maybe we want to keep some more depth type options. You're going to have to make some real decisions on that. Like, how likely is it that somebody like Cheng is going to get picked up? And could he stick on a roster all year? I don't know. Jace Bowen, I'm not sure. I mean, I think if San Francisco was truly in it, I'm not sure Blake Sable does, to be honest. I mean, like even though he performed okay for a Rule 5, he was still like a below average player. Like let's not act like we lost like, Lou Gehrig or something to the Reds and ultimately San Francisco, but Braxton Ashcraft's the one that scares me as far as getting away.
I agree with you. I think if you're going to be cautious anywhere, you do it with arms and let the other chips fall where they may.
I do think Cheng has a chance to be special. He's got some special in him, and I'm afraid to let that go just because of what it could turn into. That said, I look at the gauntlet he's got to run over to get playing time on this team. Not only just who's here right now, but you got Termar thrown into that mix for playing middle infield, and you got some pretty impact bats trying to make their way through as well, which don't think he's going to be a power guy ever. So that said, his bat is threatening. Ugh. It's going to be a crazy offseason, and that's a quick overview of it, everybody.
Well, and trades should play a big part in this. I would hope that it does, because we keep hearing that word. We've even heard it from Sherrington. So we'll see. Yep.
Let's take another quick break, and when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about some of the rule changes that Rob Manfred seems to want to bring to baseball and how they contradict what's actually going on in the game.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Gary, Graves, Jim, and we just got done talking about the roster like crazy. We need some lighthearted stuff. Let's talk a little bit about some of the comments Rob Manfred made about the potential rule changes that could be coming to the game, because Robbie, while he did everything in his power to increase the offensive output that Major League Baseball is producing by banning / slowing down the shift, really, and putting in a pitch clock, which I think he felt would ultimately change the rhythm of pitchers and get more offense going. And the bases are bigger, so there's more stealing. All that stuff is supposed to be the case. Do all that, and then out of the other side of your mouth, you complain that starting pitchers aren't stars anymore. Well, I don't think Robbie's rules have anything to do with that. I think analytics wonks have everything to do with that. The third time through is a mustard bomb, to be honest, for a lot of pitchers. It's bad. Until you can get to a point where that is disproven, I don't think we're talking about guys having wussy arms or being afraid to throw too much. I think we have analytics departments telling managers, don't have this guy face them 3 times. Look what happens. How can Rob fix that, Jim?
Yeah, it comes down to teams just find a way to get around what you put in place, right, to still accomplish what they want to do. And I saw the statistic is because they reduced the number of pitchers by 1, and it barely changed anything as far as how many number of innings pitched starters were going. So
all it's going to do is create 2 Cody Boltons per team instead of 1.
yeah, they'll find a way around it because it's the data is so obvious that you start facing guys 3 or 4 times, 3 even. It's you're not as effective.
It's so
But
obvious you could sway Jim Leyland into his gut being wrong.
yeah, you could take the most hardcore baseball guys, unless you're talking elite pitchers. You're not going to let them face those lineups a third time. So
Well, Graves, what do you think? Because he's talking to you. You said earlier, like, you didn't appreciate seeing that bullpen game in the World Series. Well, that's exactly what he's talking about. He's right. I identify with him as a fan. I'm just watching it. How do you fix it?
Well, you certainly don't. I don't see how reducing the number to 12 is going to help anything. I think it's that we're looking at the right hand, talking to the left hand here. It's a matter of, I mean, we hear it all the time, velocity, velocity, velocity. How hard was he throwing? Oh, no, this guy lost velocity. You know, he's broken. And to me, it's going max effort all the time is not the same as pitching. You're just trying to outdo the hitter. And to me, pitching is more along the lines of Greg Maddux and painting the corners and outsmarting the opponent and taking a little bit off, but knowing that you've got that 98-mile-an-hour fastball in your back pocket if you need it, instead of throwing 98 every single time. And the way we're developing pitchers now, like you said, not going 3 times through the lineup, not facing them 3 times. We're not. We're not developing the guys the same way. Not because they're less talented, but it's like you said, the numbers are showing otherwise. And I don't know how reducing it to 12, benefits somebody like Jose Hernandez. How are the Pirates going to keep? Obviously he did very well,
Sure.
This past year. But if we had 12 coming into this year, would he even be an option for us to pick up and to draft? Because okay, we've got 12 guys. We can't really afford to have a Rule 5 guy carried on the roster all year. And I also see the same thing with Cody Bolton happening again. He's up and down and up and down and up and down. How many other pitchers are we going to see in that same situation? Because now we need a fresh arm.
Jim, I could see them doing something like having a permanent pitching taxi squad, instead of like the option game, and you can kind of rotate fresh arms in that way, almost like the NHL does the bench, where you got guys that just sit up in the press box, and you call them out whenever you just need fresh legs, in the middle of a back-to-back or something along those lines. But that's not going to address his problem there.
No,
I just don't think there is one.
You mean a solution or a problem? Okay.
I don't think there's a solution.
Yeah. Look, I've said this about hitting for a while now in baseball. I think teams have figured out that it's harder to find the well-rounded guys, right? So you can teach brute force. You can teach brute force with the bat. You can accomplish the same thing you wanted on the scoreboard without having to be the guy that takes pitches the other way, that really knows the strike zone, but you can hit the ball over the fence. So to me, it's kind of like it's a lazier version of baseball in the sense that they figured out that they can get that stuff a different way. Well, I think we're seeing that now on the pitching side as well, which is it's hard to find those Max Scherzers of the world and those Strasburgs of the world. But what you can do is find a lot of guys now that can bring gas, and they may not be able to paint the corners, but you know what? You'll take the trade-off. A, you're not having to pay them as much. B, there's more of them. And I think it's lazy baseball, and it goes into teams have figured out a different way to do it, but it does hurt the overall product from what we've seen throughout the majority of the years in baseball. But it's where we're at, I think.
That's all fair, and I think that's true. The other thing that Rob Manfred did is he went ahead and announced that Brian Reynolds was going to win the MVP of the league in 2025 because robot umps are coming, and when they do, there is nobody going to be more joyous than Brian Reynolds because he is going to walk about 130 times a year, I'd say, if pitchers are going to continue to try to nibble. This is a guy that when you miss by a fraction of an inch, he knows it.
Yeah.
And he goes back and looks at that iPad and he knows he was right. Even if we are screaming at the TV, you have no business taking that. Well, come 2025, he's going to be able to take that. In fact, you're going to want him to be able to take that, right?
Yeah.
The whole game's gonna actually, I think, regress from that because hitters are just too good.
It actually amazes me what hitters what their eye is like sometimes, And I think what's kind of funny is like side to side on the plate, I think you can be a really good judge of that. They know when it misses like that much under the zone. And like umpires aren't even getting that, and they're just sitting there watching it from behind the plate. And yet they know as hitters, maybe the hitters should be umpires. I don't know. Maybe I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just saying, like, it's so amazing that you can know that it misses like that. It's incredible.
It really is. It's going to change the game when it happens, and it sounded just from his comments as though that's on the cusp of happening. So, Graves, here's my hot take. The Pirates are smarter than everyone else, and that's why they're holding on to Henry Davis as a catcher because come 2025, it won't matter whether you can frame or not. Can you block balls? Can you throw runners out? That's about all you're going to need to do back there.
Well, well, that's true. My big thing is a catcher is having that relationship with your pitcher. That was Andy is well ahead of Henry Davis in that regard. He had that one slip up with Oviedo late in the year where he went out there and was joking around with it, and Oviedo had some comments after the game. He needs to be in the be focused. So I want to see Henry improve in that regard just almost as much as blocking balls. I think that's just a huge part of it, being able to get the most out of your pitcher and not so much worried about your own stats.
I'll make a bigger comment about just the framing and stuff in general is I look, I respect it as an art form because it truly is, but I do think it's damaged the game. It's created a lot of essentially what you're doing is you're trying to trick the umpire. So the fallout from that has been just, from fans to umps to players to, and the better they've gotten at it, the bigger that fallout has become. So it's kind of probably, if you're a fan of robot umpiring, thank framing, because I think it's where a lot of this has stemmed from. So,
I think it's come from broadcasts and MLB themselves.
Technology.
MLB themselves putting up nonstop, instantaneous proof that umpires are wrong. And if you're going to do that and you have the ability provably to be right, you're going to be right. Like I saw here, like our buddy over at Bridge to Bucktober here says it's going to be a challenge system, he imagines, which means that the catcher's position will still matter on every pitch and it can be challenged. That's true. I completely agree with that. But it's a slippery slope. Once it's introduced, people aren't going to accept wrong sometimes when they know they could have right all the time. That's what's going to happen. I don't care how they introduce it. It will wind up eventually being the umpire gets a buzz on his right side and it's a strike, and a buzz on his left side and it's a ball. That's just all there's going to be to it at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the things we've talked about when it comes to the rule changes for pitchers, and they want to try to preserve maybe starting pitchers a little bit more in their impact in the game. And this is what Josh is talking about, which is not going to totally eliminate what catchers do, but like how much teams can't wait to devalue those things because of those things. And I'm quite sure the Players Association is very, very, very interested in making sure that that does not happen. But that is what happens if you can take away some of their skill or importance. Teams aren't going to pay as much for that. They're just not going to.
You know what it reminds me of? And Graves, I don't know how big of a hockey fan you are, so I don't know if this will resonate with you, but years ago, you remember how freaked out the NHL was about the role of the goon or the checker or the enforcer being kind of legislated out of the game.
Okay.
And because they wanted to protect players, so they kind of eliminated that role, and that was a role that a lot of Canadians identified with, right? So it was something that I think the traditionalists were a little upset about being taken out of the game. And then the people that just want a good, solid hockey game and don't necessarily need to see somebody turned into roadkill in the process, kind of embraced it, and being in Pittsburgh, we're a skill fan, when it comes to hockey. We want to see skill and speed because that's what, we've always won with. So we were happy to get rid of the enforcer. We sacrificed our own. We were like, yeah, take that dude off our team, get rid of him. All he did is get penalties. Goodbye. But other teams, not so much. That was their identity.
Right.
Well, it was a way for other teams.
Got the same situation going, right? You got an entire field of players that exist because they're good at something that you're going to take away from them.
Yeah, I mean, you could put this in NFL terms. How for how many years did you have those like head hunting safeties, and they were just detonating everybody that came across the middle? So I think you see this in every sport.
Like, would Devin Hester be a star today?
Yeah.
No, because they've taken the return game out of football.
Oh, the return game. I thought you meant as a receiver because he got blown up.
I'm just saying, would Devin Hester be a star today as a punt returner? No. They've legislated it out of the game.
Yeah.
And not everybody gets Percy Harvin punting to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I admit I'm old school. I'm not looking forward to the robo umps. I get it, I guess. But,
I'm not either. I'll just embrace it like everything else.
Yeah, but one question I have, Josh was saying it's going to be like a challenge system, but the last I had heard, and maybe this has changed, wasn't it like 2 challenges a game is all that you're allowed? Yeah. So, I don't, I guess that's whatever, but that doesn't.
You wait for something really egregious, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you're in major leagues, you could exhaust that in the first inning.
Right.
Absolutely.
You could. And so I guess what I'm saying is, yes, Josh says there's no limit if you keep getting it right. Right. But we know what they would do, right? So you'd be out of them by the second or third inning anyway.
Yeah.
And it slows the game that they've just tried so desperately to speed up. Let's say it does happen 15 times and you're right 15 times, and the other team does it 15 times and they're right 15 times. We've watched these pitchers. We know what we're talking about. And we're going to create what we've created in the NFL, which is you can't even celebrate until you've waited to make sure all the rollings have been. Like last night, last pitch of that ball game, curveball, top of the zone. It was a strike, probably. I've seen that called a ball. I wouldn't have freaked out if it was called a ball.
Right.
But it's a strike. Instantaneously, the umpire says strike. There's no argument. That's a strikeout. We know that's a strikeout. What would that moment be if there's a challenge system? Challenge. It's close, right? It's challenge.
Right.
I got a challenge left. I've been keeping it in my pocket. That's how the World Series is going to end every friggin' year.
Yeah, the more we've talked about it, I think that like I'd rather just if we're gonna go there, let's just tear the Band-Aid off completely.
Just do it. Be right.
Yeah, because if you're saying it's definitely right, the technology is right by the time that they roll it out and it's foolproof.
Uh-huh.
Why would we screw around with that and not just go to it and not have to sit there and play this game within a game every game? That sounds weird to me.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, and if you're not gonna do it, can you quit threatening and just like do something to make the umpires accountable for not being right? Like I'm not saying you got to fine them, but maybe you don't get to do the playoffs unless you're right this percentage of the time or something.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe it was a little distasteful that you dumped that guy just because he threw his bat down 2 inches closer to you than you like.
Right.
Let's just have some standards for it. It's a hard gig. I think everybody understands the situation and wants to be cool, but like sports has the genie's out of the bottle on replay and all that stuff. So all I'm saying is before you open another bottle, really make sure that you've thought it through and thought what it's going to do to the game, because everything that Rob Manfred just said about pitching is going to get worse.
Yeah. Well, you even said about like at the end of a game waiting to see what the challenge is like, but was it like the 6th inning and was it Gallen? He made a big pitch and he had some big time emotion with it, and then you're gonna make him look like a jackass because 10 seconds later they overturned it. Come on.
I mean, even right now, like I don't know. I was at a game against LA this year. Brian Hayes throws the ball across the diamond, gets the out, jog off the field. He throws the ball up into the stands. Everybody's like, yeah. Come back like after about a minute and a half, and here during the TV break, they had reviewed it. Turns out guy was safe. So we're actually still in the bottom half of the end. Now, I'm just picturing like what replay does to just everyday baseball games. Yeah. That stuff drives me nuts. And did they get it right? Yes, they got it right. Okay, hooray.
and yeah, they'll get it. It'll be really quick. I know that because they'll just know, right? Like it's just gonna be like challenge. Okay, it was what, but it still takes emotion out of it whenever you still have to do that. And if you're wrong, or as a batter, like you think you've just battled for this big walk, and you turn to your dugout, and you do your signs to them and whatever, and next thing you know, they're like, sorry, buddy, you got caught looking, and that to me sounds a little comical.
Yeah. I'm not anxious for any of it. And then the check swing detector that will develop, because that's got to happen too, right? They'll put weighted sensors in the bats so they can tell how hard you swung in the first place and where it moved to. It's going to be just great. It's turning to splurn ball, Jim. It is splurn ball for sure.
Oh man, I'm getting too old for this shit. That's all I know.
Just give us our game back.
I'll tell you what, we've blathered on for a long time tonight. We got to stop. But welcome to the off season, everybody. It's going to be a good time, I think. Next week, Jim and I are going to have a pitching expert on, and we are going to talk about all kinds of cool things that we spout about. We're going to hear from a pro why they matter. Things like tunneling, understanding how pitch mixes are developed, Why does a guy lose velocity? What does it mean when a guy loses velocity? What are some of the reasons he could lose velocity? Just we're gonna hear it from the horse's mouth and hopefully come out of it understanding some things better.
And I have a feeling that whole why did guys maybe lose velocity thing might make Pirate fans' ears, perk up just a tiny little bit. It's I know we haven't had to deal with that, but just in case we ever do.
Right. I mean, we'll hear it's either Matt Canada or Andy Haynes. So one of those messed it up, I'm sure. So that's all I got, though. Graves, how do people get a hold of you?
Everybody, I'm Voice from the Graves. You can find me on Twitter at KG_55 DFTG. I'm there pretty much all the time, every day.
All right. And Jim, did Ben get all the candy that he wants, and did you steal all the good stuff?
You know what? He's got a ton. I've only had 2 pieces. We'll see how that lasts tonight during the Steelers game as I eat myself into a depression. But, so all's good. He had a blast. We got the Steelers tonight. Let's hope that by the time people listen to this, they've won. And, so, hey, we need it here in Pittsburgh. Things are a little rough right now, guys.
Yeah. Somebody's got to do something. All right, everybody. I'm going to say it for us here on video. Let's go Bucks. And then I'm going to toss it off to my buddy Ben, who's filled to the brim with candy because his father is not doing the right thing and eating all of it. That's what fathers are supposed to do. So, Ben, go ahead and glurg out Let's Go Bucks as best you can.